there on the YouTube internet webs, you comic book aficionados, your readers of the unknown, you imaginauts, all of you out there. I hope everyone had a great Thanksgiving. Excuse me, great Halloween. Next up, we're going to have Thanksgiving. Coming to you November 1st for you people in the future catching this on the rewind. Saturday night, 6:37 in the PM. And let's figure out have a few things to talk about, to chat, some things that are on my mind and how we got there, and maybe show some of these things off. Um, One of the things that for your newer guys out there who pop in here from time to time, uh, I'm in my 48th year. Being involved in comics in this hobby of some way, shape, and form. Read many comics over the years, good and bad. And this led to other things. I had other things I was really into. Always been into music. Always talked about that. All right, and of course movies. And one of the great things about maybe being born in the '70s and going into the '80s is that now that time has gone by and we've looked at things, we still talk about a lot of things from the '80s, a lot of franchises, a lot of great comics, actually some books and things that go on, and it's not just nostalgia. All right, come on up here, Lester. Oh, there we go. This is Lester. Yeah, he's our very needy cat, if you will, with a lot of personality. Say hello. Okay, you want to? You want to let me do this? No. Okay. Anyway, and it was way there was a, it used to be there was a way to really get to know someone pretty quick, and you would be able to be in their house. As kids, it was in their room, and it was some amazing things would happen. Right? Cool. You going out? Yeah. Hold on, guys. All right, go on. Lester's coming up to you. Now we're alone. It's just you and I. Okay. So now that we're going to have another start after we've taken care of the cat, make sure you have subscribed, hit the thumbs up, share this. Right off the bat, we have Comic Collector there. What's going on, guys? Good to see you guys. So anyway, one of the things that was very cool to happen is that we had all this stuff in moderation to a certain extent, right? Everything was a much more personal hobby. My experiences is before the internet, as people like to reminisce about nowadays. Basically, would be you in a room, okay, or you and a few of your friends in a room. Check out this song, put on the record, the cassette, the CD. God forbid if you were there during the 8-track, okay. A lot of people finally remember the 8-track. I did not enjoy the 8-track in the car at all. Okay. Anyway, and you would be it was quiet and you were able to focus and you would actually listen to the song. I remember the first time someone tried to show me some Rush. I remember a lot of the glam rock bands of the 80s and stuff. That was the one. Oh my God, Shotgun Messiah. Shotgun Messiah was a cassette that one of my friends really sat down and was just thinking this was the second coming of music, and we really had to be a good friend and sit all the way through it and things like that, right? And then you had comics and you had books, and it was the way you read and the way you still do it if you do this is that I do a Sunday morning show a couple times throughout the year. The rainy Sunday, you would get a stack of comic books, crawl up on your bed. You would hear the rain because it was raining so hard you couldn't go outside, and you would actually read your books. It's you in your comic, you in your book. And that's it. You, it, together, world cut off from outside. And here's a book from, and this was the experience that I talk about now. This is a book. What is this? This is The Authority. Okay, well, let's do this instead. Same thing with comics. This was a book that came out in 1972, Destroyer #4. This is a reprint of 1985. In 1972, somebody would sit down and they would read the printed page. 1985, somebody would buy it new. And even between those years, those 13 years apart, they were having the same experience. So that's the magic of print in comics and listening to a record for the first time, things that are from outside. And then you would go to someone's house, be in their room with them, hang out, spend the night, do whatever. And this is where things got very interesting for me, right? You could actually get to know someone or get an idea of who they are, find out they're more interesting through looking at their record collection, through looking at their comics, looking through their little mini library or big library or whatever they had, things like that. Look, you can see their toys, how they kept took care of them. I remember the first person I ever went to their room and they had their models that they would do. And not only did they have their models completed, they had taken care of them and actually stacked them up on a little shelf and stuff like that. Things like that fascinated me. And the reason it was so much more honest then compared to now is that I'm not saying there aren't people out there like that now. They're just not on the internet, if they're not influenced by the internet. But back then, you didn't really have a lot of the magazines. You didn't have the access to information, the ability to get with a group and a lot of like-minded people to where they could be influenced. Want to be part of a group, so of course they're going to go out and start reading a certain type of book, like, can I join the club now, and be influenced in that way, right? It was much more honest then. These were things that they were spending their time with, that grabbed them, they would keep it, you know what I mean? Hopefully it didn't get thrown out, things like that. And that's where I really got to get to know people fascinating wise. Started out with probably my stepdad and his friends, going to their houses. Man, it was a lot of Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young, a lot of Yes, a little bit of Bob Dylan. Everybody seemed to have the same two Beatles albums, the greatest hits. The greatest hits where it was like 60, I don't remember, 63 to 65, and then 66 to 70. They had the Beatles looking down over you, over the ledge of one of the floors, and they had the mop top Beatles. The second album them was the same shot, looked like the same building, but they were, hippieized. The Let It Be era, things like that. And you started getting the idea that these were they weren't exactly hippies. They grew up in the 70s. They missed out on that love. You know what I mean? They were kind of catching up. And then as I got older, you would see people who had like metal albums, Judas Priest, Iron Maiden, and things, and they lived that life. It wasn't just music; it was a lifestyle by that time. You know what I mean? I had my little record collection and stuff. Then you had people who didn't really have a huge record collection. They were into top 40, whatever played on American Bandstand, and whatever played on the radio all the time and stuff. Man, it was considered kind of superficial. You follow what I'm saying? And then you would see their books, right? And there were so many things. I don't know how many Jim Morrison biographies I saw growing up. And then I ran into people who were Stephen King nuts, right? When I started noticing these movies and stuff, right? And then you had the people who were it seemed like they were hardcore, man. They were into Anne Rice. Okay. This is when Anne Rice the word goth wasn't exactly accessible. You know what I mean? Like, it was a thing coming up and stuff, right? And then you would see people who actually were readers, in my opinion. They had things like they actually read Catcher in the Rye and the Great Gatsby and stuff, right? For me, it was all about Dr. Seuss, Mark Twain, Adventures of Huckleberry Finn, and then a book that actually changed everything for me in 89, 90, and Mark Twain, Letters from the Earth. And this is when I started realizing there were deep cuts and stuff, right? You had people reading Isaac Asimov and stuff like that. Piers Anthony would pop up everywhere. Ringworld, Larry Niven, things like that, franchises and stuff. Andre Norton, a lot of Conan for many reasons. And it was at one of the stepdad's friends. Felt like he was more my friend. He was 17 when I was 4, but he had a copy of this book. This is the very book called Starman's Son. Found this I think in 1985 when I was 12, and it still remains one of my favorite books. Right. So this is how you could get to know people and connect with them, right? And this works in comics also, right? You'd go to somebody's house and you would just be itching to look at their comics, and they were itching to have you look at their comics so they could discuss this stuff. They didn't have a lot of that, right? So that's how it kind of brought you together. You had common ground as you got to read people. And yes, certain people read certain things, certain people listened to certain things. It just blows my mind how the music found them back then. Comics would find you. You would end up in a barber shop and they would have like comics laid out. You would end up sick in the hospital and people would bring you comics. That both of those happened to me and stuff, right? Let me set those over there. Hey, JP Fun is here. What's going on? Great to see you guys, right? And that's what comics used to do. It used to be a thing. Now I've talked many times about how I was very cantankerous, right? But when people were talking about Teen Titans and they were talking about the X-Men, and you would read in letter columns and editorials and stuff, how everybody was talking about those, it was pretty easy to pick up. Those were popular books, so I would go the other way. I wanted teen books to get more bang for my money. I was getting adventure comics for my Legion of Superheroes when they were digest size, Batman the Outsiders, Justice League, some Avengers here and there. Did not get into X-Men in 1985. But it was around 1985 I finally started branching out. I was in middle school and you started seeing people with comics on the bus. I saw it a little bit in elementary school, but I wasn't allowed to get up from the elementary school. You were seated on the bus by grade. So kindergarten's up front, seniors all the way to the back and so forth. And every now and then I would see some older kids, with stacks of books and stuff. To this day, 1978, 79, to this day, I remember a kid in the middle of the bus holding up a folded back comic book, and it was a pinup of Hawkman holding. This Hawkman had black hair. If you know Hawkman, he's had several looks. He had black hair. He was holding his helmet underneath his arm, standing on a jet wing, looking at the pilot, with the pilot looking up surprised. I've never known what book that is from, and it's killed me to this day, all these years later. Well, hello, Paolo. Good to see you, man. See if I can spice this up a little bit, right? So that's what I'm saying. Then, so when you go through people's comics, you immediately started seeing people who were like, just had a love of comics. Those people usually had a variety, right? Only one person I knew had the alternative books, the indie books, alternative books back then, right? I'll never forget seeing Skate Man. I was hearing great things about Neil Adams. The stepdad was a big into Neil Adams. I saw some Dead Man. I saw some Avengers. I saw this and that. But my first impersonation was Neil Adams' Skate Man. Maybe to this day, that's why it took me so long to kind of get it, with him. And then you would start getting older. I remember the first time I saw someone that had a complete collection of X-Men. That was probably around 87. That's all he had. He just had X-Men. He was a X-Men fan. John Byrne, Claremont, was his favorite one. That's what he could talk about all day. But it was so wild to see this unassuming person have a long box. One of the first times I saw a long box. One of the first times I saw bags and boards to that degree. Everything bag boarded, took care of, and it was like this beautiful mint collection of X-Men books. I'd been in the X-Men about for 2 years then, as Guardian Wars brought me in, right? And now all of a sudden, being this person who I met for the first time through friends, I went with a bunch of people because we were going to play D&D, Dungeons and Dragons, and instead I ended up watching them play BattleTech. The guy had a table set out that was made out of styrofoam. It had painted in lakes, painted in grass, and all this stuff. And then over here, I get to see his X-Men collection while they're playing, and I'm just looking like, oh my God, this is amazing, and things like that. And then, like I said, you could know right away if you were not going to get along with someone by listening to their music. Usually, I did not get along with people for whatever reason that were into Yes, the band Yes. I don't know what it is about that. And then you had the people whose whole identity became formed and around Grateful Dead and the drug culture. They were still around. They've always been around. It's always blown my mind. Despite the fact that I think one of my favorite albums of all time by the Grateful Dead is American Beauty. It blows my mind. I think that's a fantastic album from front to beginning. Not a bad song on it. So it was just not just listening to music. These things became a lifestyle and an identity. And by listening to that music and adopting the look and the clothes, it's almost like it still found you. You're growing up, you're being trendy, you want to be cool. You know what I mean? Just part of growing up and things, but it just blows my mind how those things would influence it. So music, comics, when people would actually read, and then you had MTV at the time. MTV at the time did a lot of things. MTV Raps was 30 minutes. You had a half after school. You had 30 minutes of rap music. if you made it home, you had 30 minutes of metal music. That gradually went to Headbangers Ball. That was midnight at Saturday. And it didn't matter if you went to the skating rink, cruising around with your friends, being in places you shouldn't have been, partying with your friends. Everybody would settle down at somebody's house and everybody would kick off their shoes, pile up on couches on top of each other. And it was Headbangers Ball time, right? I kind of started getting out of it when it was Slaughter time. When Slaughter popped up on Headbangers Ball, I kind of knew the scene was what it was. And then I would check it out randomly. And the first night that Kurt Cobain showed up in a yellow ball gown looking like some Devo reject for the 1950s, and it was supposed to be a ball gown, I was like, yeah, it's over. Ricky Rackman cut his hair. It was over. So you kind of got a sense that a lot of these scenes were dying down, even though you didn't have the words nor the wisdom to figure it out. So people who you connected with by watching the Headbangers Ball, the guys that kind of stuck around and stuck with Headbangers Ball were kind of getting left behind a little bit. They're the guys that carried the mullet all the way up to like 1996, 6 years after it died, things like that. They kind of got dated and stuck. Fun fact by Paulo Costa, Chariots of Fire composer. Oh, do not do this. Am I still there, guys? You got to be kidding me. There we go. Okay, fun fact. Chariots of Fire composer Vangelis was invited to Yes keyboard player. He said no. All right. Prime One collector is there. Evening, everyone. What's up, Howler? And this is it. I'm going to be showing some books here, a few books here to kind of get across what I'm saying here. So it kind of blows to get back on topic, it kind of blows my mind that, you kind of, you didn't so much seek out these people. I'm sure people did, in my opinion, but I didn't really have a comic book shop to hang out in, and it only stayed open for about a year, but until about 1994. By that time, I'd already had several jobs, lived with a couple of girlfriends, slept in my car for 3 months, had adventures, things like that, all that growing up by 1994. Now I have a comic book shop. Ironically, it was filled with a few guys that I knew in high school and really hadn't seen since about 3 years, in about 3 years and stuff. Yet here we all were at comics connecting. I still have a CD one of my friends burned, and it has things like Go Bowling with the Skinheads and things like that. A lot of alternative music from the late 80s and stuff. Take the Skinheads Bowling. That was the song. Yeah, things like that. Little Black Flag on there, some other stuff. I could probably go find it and stuff. I still have the CD from that. I've got a 31-year-old CD. So here we are, and yet again, in that environment, the comics, the books, comics kind of kept us connected. We picked up where we left off, this thing that would unite things. And then over the years, through role playing, I got out of Dungeons and Dragons, ended up playing White Wolf, ended up meeting other people. Werewolf Apocalypse, Vampire the Masquerade. I could pull out 1 or 2 books about the Fomori behind me and things like that. Ended up meeting people who were into Vertigo because Vertigo was becoming hot, and Sandman. And now you had the females. Females were finally getting sort of into comics. More, well, they would admit it. They were more numerous. That's probably a better way to put it. So through all the years, you would have things to break the ice and talk to and stuff. And I still have connections to all those people thanks to social media and stuff, right? So let's kind of go forward. Some people got out of things. Some people did this. There's people that I know that have been into Kiss, the band, to this very day, from 1978 until now. They're still into it. And that gets brought up by the fact that Ace Frehley has recently passed away, and it's all over the social media and things like that. But now we get to what's been sent to me. Now we're getting relevant, guys. You guys have been on the journey. I've had 4 or 5 people send this to me wanting, they give them their opinion. They kind of want my opinion, but we're going to go with our buddy Josh that pops up here every now and then. Zinc Comics, right? He's about the 4th person to send me this, not this particular video, but this topic. Oh God, what is the guy's name, man? Hold on, guys. There's an Absolute Batman annual that's come out. Let me get the name right. Did I keep it? But anyway, there's a Absolute Batman annual that came out. It came up Abomination. That's so funny. And I've checked out a few videos. I kind of checked out a few pages online. Check out the news. Daniel Warren Johnson's Absolute Batman annual is fill in the blank. It's divided people again, right? About the last 10 years in comics, and I do blame it completely online. I completely online in marketing decisions and hiring horrible people and finding out that a lot of people weren't maybe the greatest people ever to begin with, kind of in comics and stuff. But artists and writers are temperamental people. They're wired a little different. I've been around them most of my life and stuff, right? In one shape or form, right? Way or form and stuff, right? And they're just a little bit different. You know what I'm saying? And that's where that talent comes from. It's what I'm trying to get at. It's a necessity. It's a character trait. It's a it's it's necessary. There's emotion that's got to come out into this stuff, right? And now it seems like it doesn't seem like we know that the stuff has been pushed to the left a little bit, and then maybe somebody from the right comes up, gets pushed out. Then we get Comicsgate, and then over the years, this has gone on for so long, it's kind of become manufactured and stuff, right? And then I was actually trying to check out Saturday Night Live, and I didn't know about this Bad Bunny controversy about him playing in the Super Bowl over here. And he came out and he said something that really bothered me. I could have really gave a shit less. I'm at the point where this stuff is going on, and if you know a little bit of, I'm gonna throw a little philosophy at you and stuff like that of how I got centered to finally get my head out of this crap. But this absolute Batman is really blew some minds a little bit, got people divisive, right? It's what happened to you sitting down and you're reading, and it's you in the book, it's you in the song, in a space that is for yourself. And now it's sort of like, let's get some clout. The term comic book tourist is getting thrown around and stuff like that. There's as many people that have opinions about this. They are obviously not all actual comic book collectors and stuff, right? They found something to involve themselves in for whatever reason, right? And Bad Bunny came out, and I didn't know there was a controversy. You probably heard about this or haven't, whatever. You may not even know who Bad Bunny is. But and I hope I'm talking about the right guy. But he said something like, when I'm on the Super Bowl, you better learn to speak Spanish. And this was blowing my mind, right? Because I often talk about going to comic book shops and going to comic book conventions and being like, man, this is a great space, right? Concerts were the same way. Everybody gets in there. I have been in mosh pits. Yes, as little as I was, I have done the mosh pits. I have been on above in them. I have been below as above with the Superman gliding, where you'd pick somebody up and take them around the crowd and stuff like that, right? I have been in there where I have chanted die, die, die while they're playing Creeping Death at Metallica. You know what I mean? I have sung with 18,000 people to Iron Maiden. You know what I mean? Like, you know what I mean? Iron Maiden's probably not the greatest one to say, because I was just in awe that I got to see Iron Maiden. But yeah, there's been many concerts where I have been there, and I have thousands of people. We are all singing the same song at the same time and things like that. And so music, brought people together, right? Um, and then the most you would see was you would see people being like, screw punk. They never said screw this one person. They were like metal forever, screw punk or something like that. But yet you would have a band like Motorhead come up, and you can pull up a 1985 video on YouTube of Wendy O. Williams singing with Motorhead while Lemmy's on stage. And they go to the crowd, and you will see metalheads, punks, and just regular rockers all together on the front row of, right up against the stage and stuff. And you had Motorhead being that one band that would bring the punks and the metalheads together in a space, and there wouldn't be a riot or anything. You know what I'm saying? People took this stuff very serious because it was a lifestyle, and I tried to imagine that's kind of what's going on now, but you got to that lifestyle by actually experiencing the stuff and listening to it. Because it's one thing to look at a collection and look to what they have, but nobody really had the conversation of what is that deep cut that got you. And you would find out my dad set me down with this Beatles record, and my grandpa came in the room, and they played the greatest song I ever heard. And you can probably guess what Beatles song it is. You know what I'm saying? It was Hey Jude. things like that. Unfortunately, in my house, the favorite song of the stepdad was Deep Purple "Smoke Over Water," and I can't listen to that anymore, because I thought the song sucked. I still think it sucks. But that's what I'm trying to get. You would find out there were stories behind this and connections and things, and they would read a book, and a lot of people would actually have just a chapter or one page of a book that really touched them, or the whole book did. Who knows? You know what I'm saying? There's memories. Lord of the Rings brought people together and things like that. And now we have a guy saying he's going to sing at the Super Bowl and you better learn Spanish by the time he gets on there. And I'm like, I've never seen music completely divide people. I grew up in an era where Aerosmith and Run DMC came out together, and then few years later, Public Enemy and Anthrax came out with something together. You know what I mean? Like it was all music, man. It was all music. If it sounded good and it moved you, it didn't matter. So I'm just sort of like, wow, you know what I mean? Like, these are interesting times. How everybody's just so up and ready. What do we got here? Oh man, hey, thanks for everybody popping in here, man. John is here, so let me take this opportunity to say that if you're not subscribed, I would definitely appreciate you subscribing and be like John here, man. Hit that bell. Make sure you like the video and subscribe. John is usually the first ones here, and I threw him for a loop tonight. It's fantastic, man. JP Fawn. I used to be a huge Metallica fan until I got into alternative music like the Pixies and Radiohead. That's what saved me from the glam metal years. I've made a lot of peace. I still love Cinderella Night songs. I still love Wait by, White Line. There's a lot of good stuff in there, man. Shotgun Shoot 'em up, Shotgun Sally, Cats and Boots. I mean, there's a lot of good memories in there, but it really got derivative by the time we got to Danger and Danger. And that's when I was about 17 and I got handed a mix CD by a friend's girlfriend. And I remember the first song I heard on it was American Music. Okay. So Violent Femmes, Pixies, Doolittle, huge influences on me, started pulling me out. I had all the right roots not to fall for the glam metal. But when you have a girl tell you to come over there and sit between her legs and she starts playing with your hair and she's into Poison, you're like, yeah, I like Poison too. So I'm like, I totally blame myself for being weak, and then I actually got into those bands. But there's a lot of great musicians in there, and a lot of the cream has risen to the top. I still have my metal roots, but I think the one that found me and the one that is most natural for me is punk. I've met Tommy Ramone, which blew my mind, and that kind of certified a little bit of like who I am. You know what I mean? And yes, this is the power of music. Power of music can take you back in time. The right comic book can take you back in time. The right story can take you back in time, and things like that. Kind of help you know who you are. What we got here? Let me finish what I was reading here. Radiohead. Oh my God. No. Oh my God. Plastic. Oh my God. Help me out, guys. God, I can hear it. Plastic water for plastic trees. It's not coming to me. Radio. I mean, I listen to a lot of Radiohead. No Surprises is a great one, but I'm trying to think of the one. Plastic Trees. It'll come to me. Have you heard of Hue? Yes, they are a Metallica metal band from Mongolia. Yeah, and what's so funny is I listened to Misfits, and thanks to the Misfits led me to a punk band. This is back in the 2000s, I think, to a band called Balzac over from Japan, I think, also. Oh, well, Mongolia is not. You get what I'm saying. But yeah, I've heard of Hugh, believe it or not, JP. Eric Breen, Camper Van Beethoven, referencing a Howler stream. Nice. Oh, man. Van Morrison all day long, too, sir. Yeah. Yeah, I listened to Van Morrison. Van Morrison actually got me my car past an inspection because I had it playing in the car when the mechanic turned it on. All right. What do we got here? Everybody's saying hello. That's what I'm saying. We're all coming together here. Smoke Over Water is a ripoff of the bossa nova song Maria Moita. Is that what it is? It's far away from me, guys. Yeah, I'll check that out. John, Anthrax, absolutely. Cinderella was my fave band in high school because my girlfriend at the time loved them. Thank you, Prime One Collector. Fake Plastic Trees. I absolutely love that song. That's one of those songs where I'm like, yeah, those are the words I've had about, some things I think about. Uh, grew up in and then we have Friar Tuck. Grew up in the 70s and 80s and 80s. Have two playlists on my phone, old and grunge, depends on my mood. Yeah, and it's all music. It's all great. My thing is that as a kid, from seventh grade to about 11th grade, 10th grade, 10th or 11th grade, I really feel like I got off track. I feel like I got into what was trendy and what was playing on MTV all the time. You know what I mean? Before that, I was listening to Motown, Elvis, even a little bit of disco, Tom Petty. You know what I mean? I had all the right roots. You know what I'm saying? And I love the. I don't talk about the Beatles a lot because the Beatles have always been there. You know what I mean? A little bit of Rolling Stones too. I mean, if you listen to Moonlight Mile and Child of the Moon, the Brian Jones and the Mick Taylor years there, like that, I tend to find that I like the deep cuts more than I like the radio hits, if you will, right? Radiohead is a major soundtrack to my teenage life. Prime One can, yeah, absolutely. I remember when Creep came out. I was living with someone, and I was very young, and it fit the exact moment of the world when that song came out. See what I'm saying? We're all getting united by this stuff, and now there's a lot of division and stuff, right? And I'm starting in this absolute Batman has absolutely broken the hearts of a couple people just trying to have the comic book experience that we've had, right? Instead of just writing stories, we've reached an era over the last, I feel like 10 to 15 years. I really feel like going back to 20 years. I think there's been enough stuff coming out that we have a whole generation going back to Bendis. I really feel like it was Bendis with that Avengers Disassembled that we've seen the whole comic book culture go down a trapping, if you will, right? And what I'm going to talk about is, there's a lot of division now, a lot of people coming on there. And I feel like a lot of it is for clout and to have a purpose online, trying to be heard and pick a side for whatever reason. I'm never going to understand it. I'm never going to understand it. There's things that I would die on a hill for, censorship and things like that. Um, there's things that I would die on a hill for just because of like the PMRC coming after music back in the day. You know what I mean? D. Snyder, John Denver. Who's the third one? John Denver, D. Snyder. Damn it! I'm gonna have to turn in my metal card here. Anyway, you had people, allies you never thought. Oh, Frank Zappa. People you would never think would become allies came together over music to go against censorship. And what came out of that? Before there was the Barbara Streisand effect, where something that wasn't that big, but it offended you, and you made a big deal about it. Other people checked it out, and all of a sudden it became popular. Then you had that sticker. They would put the sticker right on the album. You're supposed to be over 18 to get it. You know what sticker I'm talking about. Yeah, and sales would go up no matter what. Oh man. So I'm going to throw a little thing at here as soon as I find it here. Let me get to my saved stuff because there's many things. So I've talked about how like I read and listen to things, and I've been doing a lot of like stoics, reading some stuff on Stoics here and there, listening to a little bit of this and that. And I found something called the 7 dangerous places that will destroy you emotionally and mentally. They're not physical places, they're things you get involved with, right? And just to kind of shut it down, what I'm seeing a lot of right now is something called the Hall of Mirrors. You see yourself only through others' eyes. Hall of Mirrors is where you're looking out there and you're losing the truth of who you are. You're going along with the crowd, even if you don't know why they're doing that, right? It stunts you. You forget who you are or never get to discover who you are, right? The theater of masks replaces your true face. So even if you don't believe everything on the extreme left, and even if you don't believe everything on the extreme right, and even if you kind of see where ICE is coming from, and even if you see you don't agree with this over here, stuff like that, you don't get to say what your real opinion is. You put on that mask to be part of the group. That's a lot what I'm seeing. To me, that's what Absolute Batman is starting to become about. It used to be about the material, talking about the ideas it brings up. You know what I mean? You can talk about 1984 all day long. You know what I mean? I can bring up Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy and talk to you about a few things about religion due to a fish they put in your ear that will translate all the languages so everybody can talk to each other no matter what planet they're from. And they're sitting there and they argue that that's awful convenient. Why would God make something so convenient? Or it's proof there is a God because only God would make something so convenient. You see what I'm saying? It used to be about ideas you could talk about and debate and things like that, right? None of that, man. What do we got here? Just flat out toxic relationships. You sacrifice your truth just to survive. Look how many people have gotten fired by Disney because they came out with a different opinion and that was it. You know what I mean? They're afraid to actually talk about when you cannot allow yourself to discuss things as your mind starts seeing truth. You know what I mean? What's in front of your eyes, and you're supposed to just start repeating what's been told to be accepted. That's no way to live. You know, you're just going to lose yourself. Chamber of self-betrayal. You silence your inner truth, right? A lot of that. I see a lot of that. You know what I mean? Like you do not get to be who you truly are because you have to fit in. Cult of performance and image. You mistake your worth for appearance and achievement. You mistake your worth for appearance instead of achievement and stuff, right? There's no achievement in this. The one of the reasons I have never really liked activists to begin with, even though it is a right and they should be able to practice it. That's one of the great things about this country. You know what I'm saying? Is that people go too far with it. When you start taking orders from a group and you go out there and you get yourself arrested, your ass is the one sitting in jail. They're up there being just fine. And eventually they're going to move on to another cause so they can keep making money. You know what I mean? You end up becoming a zealot. You have the belief of what you are fighting for. They're actually secretly the man that you're going against. I don't know how many times I've seen that around here because of the little college towns here from Tech to King College and stuff. A little bit of ETSU. You know what I mean? I've seen a lot of that over the years. Known some of those people. So that's what I'm trying to get at. There's a lot that I'm seeing that is actually unhealthy, and that is philosophy from the 60s. They're just repeating history. That's what I've always kind of said. If you go back and you read and you do a little digging, you're going to find out all this has happened before. It's just the subtext. And now it's very powerful because thanks to the internet, you know, we get this glut of information, and and it's that simple. And because of this, these people are eventually not going to get paid, or they're going to grow up and have responsibilities, or they're just going to get tired of what they're doing, and then they move on. We've already seen it twice and stuff, right? The best example that I've already always used on here for talking about things like this is, and I didn't come up with this term, I've just absorbed it somewhere, right? 60s was the party, 70s was the hangover. And to me, what I've added to that is 80s was where everybody was finally waking up fresh and new. The hangover was over, right? Because I don't know how many. I remember the 70s. I can remember the seven. I turned 7 in 1980. I can remember the 70s, and I just talked to somebody that was one of my stepdad's friends. They're like, "No, the 70s sucked. You know, don't get it wrong. You know." So anyway, but you can hear it in the music, right? You can listen to go back and listen to all those protest songs and Bob Dylan. The times are changing. This means something. And then you get something like Jefferson Airplane doing volunteers about that generation got old and all that things like that. And then what do we get? We get the Carpenters. Everybody was tired. Everybody was tired. Let's do a little Ticket to Ride with that remake, make it softer than what the Beatles did, and Rainy Days and Mondays, and everybody just kind of chilled out a little bit. Everybody chilled out a little bit, right? And then in the 80s, we got to kind of come back with this. And that's in the music, that's in the books, that's in the lifestyles, it's in the Woody Allen movies. Things started getting exciting with a little bit of Star Wars going in there. You know what I mean? And things were coming up. A little punk rock came in and gave a freaking heroin shot up through the arm of rock and roll. And that's our culture that we grew up in for a lot of us, guys. So that's what I'm trying to say. Even when you had people saying this band sucks or I don't like that kind of music and stuff, like I said, there was always something that brought people together. Woodstock, okay, Live Aid, 1985, Freddie Mercury tribute concert in '93. Does that sound right? Things like that. I was one of those people that got to see Queen play Live Aid in 1985, and it is burnt into my mind. There are so many things that even though I was not there physically to experience it through the television, I was there with everybody else at that moment. You know what I'm saying? And that's kind of what's missing. Now we have things like Comicsgate, and now everything's political. And we got an absolute Batman story that my prediction for comics to bring it back, that why all this stuff is just kind of silly. Maybe it's they just need to get it out of their system. This is what they're involved in. It's there. Okay, sometimes you just got to wake up and realize that people are going to do what they're going to do. You know, that's just how it is, right? And but you, at the same time, you also got to remember there are people out there who still hold on to these things. It's still about the comics, right? But here's what's going to happen. Everybody's arguing about, is Batman far left? Is Batman far right? Look at this. Chuck Dixon is on X posting pictures of Batman taking down Antifa, and some other people have had that image drawn by the actual absolute Batman artist and taking down ICE and all the stuff, and they're fighting about that. Great, great. It's all political. That's not about Batman. That's not about Batman. And Batman, Wonder Woman, Superman. Over the last, I don't know, 7 or 8 months, I've seen several places, comic book news, post here and there, where a lot of these characters are going to go in the public domain in the 2030s. And if I remember Crisis on Infinite Earths, and if I remember a little bit of DC 52 and things like that, the big, you know, some of the mistakes and stuff, we're going to see them getting very derivative, more derivative than they are now. What I read about, what I have looked at in the last couple of days of Absolute Batman, it's derivative. It feels like I'm looking at old 70s movies of Billy Jack and Walking Tall with today's political marketing in it. You know what I'm saying? I don't know if this artist and this writer believes in what they're writing, but we have a whole new set of comic tropes. Make it political. In the 80s, it was give these characters feet of clay. Okay. Make everybody grim and gritty. And let's move on. We got brought out of that by Mark Waid coming on The Flash in the 90s, giving a little Silver Age touch there, right? Hellboy and Image, making it all about the artist and stuff. There was things that came out, and the things that have risen to the crop are the things that were the actual art of comic. You know what I mean? The actual art of making music and doing it through sound, you know what I mean? Or meaning or substance, whatever word you want to put in there, right? And we're not having a lot of that right now. What we have now are tropes and trends. In 10 years, we'll see what's risen to the top. In the 90s, everybody talks about the glut of comics came out and the gimmick covers and 800 books on there and everybody creating everything and everybody wanting to be indie and crash and burn and late comics. And what have we got out of that? We've gotten Bone by Jeff Smith. Okay. We got Hellboy. Okay. In my opinion, James Robinson's Starman. Now, to me, it seems like I'm always running across people discovering that one again, but my radar is up, right? And this isn't unusual, right? I have recently replaced one issue of my Wizard collection because I got in here and found out I bought this at a pawn shop for $1, and there's some pages ripped out that I didn't catch. So I got on and found another copy for $2.99. And it amazes me to go back this Wizard came out in 2007. And most of the articles in here are still about 80s comics, okay? About the 80s and Thor and things from the past, X-Men of the 90s, you know what I mean? Public domain heroes and stuff. It's still about the past, right? So that's what I'm thinking about comic books, right? It's a lot about legacy and pulling from the past. And why do we do that? It's of course it's nostalgia for a lot of people, but you try to get these characters back to their core about what they were. You know what I mean? Yeah, but we're back on the tropes. Now, what I'm saying is that where these characters are getting close to public domain, I started getting down there, we're going to see more derivative stuff, in my opinion. We're going to see people coming in where these characters are going to go into the public domain. We got the James Gunn movies going on. We got to keep getting a product out. We got to do this, we got to do that, and we're going to see some weird fucking takes on these characters. Absolute Batman, absolute Superman, absolute Wonder Woman, absolute Martian Manhunter. If you are digging these books, awesome. I'm hearing that DC is kicking Marvel's ass here, right? It's what I've been hearing. I heard how they dropped the Ultimate line after everybody was invested. They're like they pulled pulled the rug out from under Hickman again. There's people who are now missing X-Men Krakoa or whatever the hell that era was that I couldn't hang with and stuff like that, right? People are starting to finally waking up to like, this sucks what they've been doing, right? We're here again, right? Well, we've got a couple years for, like I said, the big Trinity goes into public domain. So there's no telling the weird shit they're going to do. We can only cross our fingers and hope that somebody comes in and does something of substance that's going to last. You know what I mean? And like I said, there's always been a thing about looking back at the history of comics, history of these characters, and going back to basics with a lot of them. We can only hope, you know what I'm saying? But to move forward, these comics do have to evolve. It's just they're trying to change for change's sake instead of something very organic, that goes forward. Okay, let me see what we have here. Woo. Okay. That's fine. Friar Tuck, that's fine with trendy MTV. God, some songs have great videos and make you think of these songs, put pictures and thoughts. Yeah, it was absolutely outstanding. Like, I mean, I'm very lucky to have had MTV from 85 to about 94. You know what I'm saying? In my opinion, 1993 on MTV was fantastic with the music that came out. And to me, 93 is a magical year. If you ask me, JP Fawn, as I attempt to get into bass playing again, I'm a bass player. There you go, guys. I realized that Stuart Zender from Jeremiah K is someone I want to aspire to. Jeremiah K. It blows my mind that Jeremiah K had the video, right, where he's dancing on a moving floor. You know what I'm saying? And all the furniture's moving. The guy had some moves and he's doing all this stuff. And why is Jeremiah K really immortal? Because of a Napoleon Dynamite song. Or, excuse me, their song being in a Napoleon Dynamite movie. You know what I'm saying? Some things need censoring, in my opinion, Friar Tuck. Anyone having kids can appreciate censorship to an extent. Now, Friar Tuck, this is one of those things where your opinion is completely your opinion. I'm not here to change your mind, but just to give you an idea where I'm coming from as a parent, I made sure I knew what my kids were watching or in reading. That's what I'm trying to get at. I'm trying to think of a great movie that's almost artistic and stuff that's just too heavy to be for kids. There's things that are just not for kids, but they have artistic value. You know what I mean? My problem is more of parents who have bad judgment or lazy parenting. And then, of course, there's no way that I'm going to sit here and act like there are things that I absolutely do not think my kids or anybody else's kids should be exposed to, right? But it's the parents thing. You know what I'm saying? To me, the responsibility is shifted. Let's get rid of it, instead of like, I need to do my job. You see what I'm saying? So that's where I come from. It's not saying that I approve of everything. You know what I mean? I'm a human being. There'll be some hypocrisy in that, man. But I'm just sitting here saying I don't like the idea of a certain small group making decisions for the masses. You know what I mean? So yeah, totally get it. As a parent, you want to protect your children. That's something to be very proud of. You follow what I'm saying? As long as you, as a parent, it's involved instead of let's just abolish this. The biggest face-to-face thing I had, and I practically got kicked out of a library. Well, I didn't get kicked out of a library. It was pretty close, as I'm remembering this, right? Is somebody came in and they brought in the movie MASH, and they said, you need to get rid of this because that opening song, he didn't say theme song, but I'm telling you what it is. He said that opening song is about, the self-deletion, you know what I'm saying? And I'm just sort of like, and I had something to say. I didn't know I was going to go that way. I'm like, are you kidding me? And this was around, I know I was 2005 to 2007 because of where I was living. I remember I was in a library and I remember where I lived. So did we get rid of MASH, even though it ended up having one of the most historic season finales ever in pop culture. Came from a movie to a TV show. Okay. Uh, JP Fun always wanted a funkier sound. Also, it's Stuart Zender. Absolutely. It takes you back to enjoyable moment of good memory. Absolutely. I grew to love and appreciate the police because of MTV. Oh man, King of Pain, man, King of Pain by the Police, dude. Pilo. Quality requires work from both the creator and the consumer. Really, the way I see that, if you keep buying crap, they will keep making crap. So maybe we need to get together again and maybe talk about that at some point, right? But my opinion is that as long as it is making money and it's crap, they will keep making crap. I've always said that, especially since the 52 came out in the early years of this channel, right? JP Fawn, you got Captain Carrot, the final arc, and it's grand. Yeah, yeah. I love Pig Iron and Alley Cat. Also, why can't they do this book again? It would be great for younger kids. See, I look at this. I've just gone through a bunch of my rebagging a few books, and I was getting them out to try to get one more video in before Halloween, but I've just got too busy. Treehouse of Horror. This stuff is already out there. You know what I mean? I have the Treehouse of Horror, the 3 omnibuy upstairs. I haven't really gone through them yet. That collects all these one shots from over the years with with that kind of stuff. This is what I'm saying. This is kind of goes back to what I was saying. The books are already out there. And while everybody is, see, I hate saying everybody because the market is so much smaller. I saw them celebrate something like one of the Absolute books. I don't know. They printed 150,000 or whatever. And I can't see that as a huge win when Marvel used to sell 100,000 books per book back in the day, cheaper paper. The prices were between, I can't remember, 60 cents up to $1, things like that. To me, that's not a win. Paulo Costa, Project Superpowers with concept designs by Alex Ross. I read the launch storyline. I was not impressed. Turning it into a whole line was unnecessary and distracting, so I quit. Exactly. That's what I'm trying to get at. The demand wasn't there for those books. It was a cool idea. It was a celebration of the comics and stuff like that. But I never heard anybody come out and say, you suck if you like this. You suck if you don't like this. You know what I mean? That's everybody's still a comic book collector. I kind of liked when people, I always thought it was kind of wild. I'm trying to think of a character in particular, man, but I always thought it was kind of wild where even though you weren't around other people while you read your comic books or listen to some of this music, but when you got around a couple of people and somehow a character or a book got brought up and everybody was like, oh yeah, that sucks. You know what I mean? Like when it's for you to have it used to be that if your book sucked, it really sucked because people from all over and all different walks of life all end up agreeing on it without talking to each other. You follow what I'm saying? Nobody really influenced the other one in the room. They did put on a mask. They weren't trying to get approval or anything like that. I always found that fascinating. All right. So, guys, I was going to show off some things. I'm probably going to save it for another thing, but let me go ahead and show you what I picked up today for $20. And if you guys know me, I don't really spend that much on there. That's a lot for me to get even this fantastic hardback, but I've been eyeballing this for a month. It was either this or volume 1 of Amazing Spider-Man. And I decided to go with this, right? I just had to, right? But anyway, I found this for $20 at Ollie's. It is volume 2, Marvel Masterworks of the Fantastic Four, right? So in my Epic collection, I need volume 1 and the last volume, I don't know what number it is. Can't see it from here, to have the complete Kirby stuff. The first book, the last book of Epic Collection. Well, this is issues 11 through 20, and I want to count this. So hopefully I'll find something that has the first 10 issues or first 9 issues and whatever of Fantastic Four, because there's going to come a time where I finally sit down and I read the Fantastic Four, Stan Lee, Jack Kirby run from beginning to end. I'm not going to say it's going to be all in one setting, but this gets me a step closer. Now, when I was a kid with this, not to get on a rant or anything like that, but Kirby was big in the house. And a lot of the books the stepdad had, he bought in the 60s. He claimed to have had Fantastic Four #1 in his hands. Instead, we had the oldest one I could remember is X-Men #3 that I've talked a lot about and things like that, right? Because what happened is that apparently he was a Kirby nut growing up in the 60s. I think it was 1970 or something that he went into the Navy. And while he was in the Navy, as much that all those military people that happened to them when they left their home, their mom cleaned out all their junk and she gave all his comics away. He recovered some of them from his friends who got him or something or whatever the story was. And I was able to have a bunch of these accumulate into my collection from his, a lot of the Jack Kirby Fantastic Four and stuff. And then in 2010, when I was moving out of Roanoke, Virginia, and I was loading that U-Haul by myself, it was as I moved, and it took me a little while to figure it out. I had 2 long boxes of comics stolen, and one of them was my Silver Age Kirby. Somebody hit the jackpot getting that one. They also got another box that was full of my Hulk run, stuff like that, some Kirby's and stuff in that also, Peter David, Todd McFarlane, that kind of stuff. Been able to recover a lot of that stuff, you know. So anyway, that's why the Kirby stuff is something that is, I don't want to say sacred. I mean, I have my OMAC, my Commandy, all those I'm still always looking out for some losers by Kirby. Fantastic Four is the one that there will come a day where it's from beginning to end all the way through. Who knows? Maybe I'll absorb some cosmic powers by doing that. Gore Vidal, you jumped in here just in time. I got your email. Saw it last night. I'll be letting you know. So and I'm actually getting ready to hop off here, guys. That scene in the arc when Frogzilla splits into pig iron, spits out pig iron, and falls into Alley Cat's Sanctum Sanctorum was amazing. Also, if you go to Bearded Shirts, they have a couple of Zoo Crew shirts up for sale. That's awesome. Gore Vidal, another man that is a man who is well read, opinion, and Paolo saying hello to him. So, guys, enjoy your weekend. Make sure you are subscribed, hit that bell. Like I said, I got some stuff to show, I got some more thoughts. And yeah, man, glad everybody could join me tonight. Subscribe, sub, share, let people know we still talk about things here. And again, be excellent to each other. Later, guys.